The province's Open for Summer plan is well underway, including patios being reopened at restaurants once again. So nice to see that, enjoying the sunshine. Premier Jason Kenney says if the COVID-19 numbers continue to decline, which we've seen a lot of lately, and more Albertans are vaccinated, we can fully reopen by July. Now, what will that look like for the city of Lethbridge? To talk about this in more detail is Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman. Chris, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Great to be here, Hal.
Now, first of all, let's talk about Canada Day. Big party. We're celebrating our country's birthday once again. Is there enough time for the city to plan a bit of a celebration?
In a word, no. We won't be able to host the big party that we usually have at Henderson Lake Park, and we won't be able to host the fireworks in the evening where we've had 5,000 people. Those events take some lengthy planning and also ordering of supplies. Right now, we're just encouraging people to participate at home. They can order a barbecue in a box from the Interfaith Food Bank until June the 25th and have that on Canada Day. They can attend the Indigenous events at the Yates on June the 27th. There will be a series of things that are put on by community groups where people can be safe and spread out and still participate in celebrations that they choose.
Now, how about Whoop Up Days? Have you talked to the folks at the X? I mean, it sounds like the Calgary Stampede is a go in a reduced capacity. How about our festival?
Well, it will be a challenge this year, Hal, because of the construction that's happening for the AgriFood Hub. And having construction on site and having several thousand people would be a challenge. I think additionally, we're looking at using a touring company that generally comes through the States with people who maybe with that who may need special clearance, and that would take additional planning. Generally, it's up to the Lethbridge Exhibition to organize that, but I think they've got a lot on their plate this year, and we might be celebrating differently.
Now, Council recently voted 5-4 to not repeal the mandatory face covering bylaw. Let me ask you something. Why keep the masks on when much of the province is reopening, especially with case counts coming down here in the South Zone and close to 70% of Albertans being vaccinated? Why cover up?
Well, Lethbridge is a service center. We're a hub. And while the numbers are impressive for Lethbridge, the areas around us are not really, they're about 50% as successful as the city of Lethbridge. So we're seeing vaccine take-ups in the 30% level. Now, those people are coming into Lethbridge. They're buying things. They're involved in our community, attending our retail stores. We've got frontline workers who would be exposed to them. These people may not be vaccinated at all, and they are least likely to wear masks. So that puts people at risk. And you have to remember there are people in the city of Lethbridge who have immune compromised situations. And we have young people, 12 years of age and younger, who will not be eligible for the vaccines. So, we have to take every precaution possible until we're sure, absolutely sure, that this pandemic is under control.
And you've had your jab, right? You want to show me the sweatshirt? Maybe show our viewers there at home?
Yeah, I've got, I've done it, and I'm happy to promote it to others. And I think it's the best way that I can return to a normal life. I'm looking forward to seeing my grandkids. I'm looking forward to traveling. And I have two of my kids live in other countries. And I'm hoping that by the fall or spring next year, I'll be able to have a more normal life. And I'm looking forward to that. And we're seeing now the signs that people who don't have vaccines may not be welcome in other countries, and their ability to function may be limited.
Now, Council voted unanimously recently to advance the Indigenous placemaking strategy a year ahead of schedule. Can you explain exactly what this is all about? And will this potentially mean maybe name changes to certain areas of the city, including Indian Battle Park?
Yes, when the 215 graves were discovered in Kamloops, and then subsequently there've been a couple of others, and there may be some in this area as well. Certainly, based on the stories we're hearing from the Blackfoot people, there certainly is a possibility that we will uncover some similar things. Having said that, we have to take a look at what we were planning to do anyway and say, well, maybe there needs to be greater urgency to that. We were going to have an assessment of the sensitivity of some names that we're using in the city of Lethbridge. And those may be up for discussion. So we've heard about Indian Battle Heights. We've heard about possibly Micmac Boulevard. Uh, what about Whoop Up Drive? Uh, we've got Indian Battle Park. So I think what we need to have is a consultation process. I don't think we want to jump into any quick fixes. We want to make sure that any solutions that we come up with, we do in collaboration with the Blackfoot people in this area. So that process will begin. We'll identify some of the areas that need to be looked at and some of the names that need to be looked at, and have a community conversation about how do we go forward from here.
Now, there are many business owners who've had to close their doors for good during the pandemic and the lockdowns. Tell me about some of those business owners and families you've spoken to who've been severely impacted very hard during the COVID-19 pandemic. Their livelihoods are gone.
Yeah, we hope that their livelihoods will come back. I was very concerned that they didn't receive the provincial supports and funding and federal funding supports that they needed. And we heard about Mocha Cabana being disqualified from receiving federal funding. I thought, wow, that's a big problem. We mainly restaurants, fitness facilities, of course. Fitness facilities were going great guns, in our city. People were really into fitness, and then COVID hit. I think in the last 3 years, the number of new businesses that started out that were fitness related were phenomenal. And of course, that's a big investment, and people had leases, those types of things. And it's been a big challenge for both restaurants and fitness facilities and many others. So these are people in our community. I hope that we can get back to normal, and we can do that safely so that these businesses can open and stay open.
Alberta Justice Minister Casey Medu said there were some deficiencies with the plan put forward by Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh to clean up the Lethbridge Police Force. Now, have you spoken with the chief about what some of these potential deficiencies are?
I have to be very careful because elected politicians cannot direct the police. So we have a police commission whose prime responsibility is to oversee the response. I fully support the police chief. I believe that he is a very honorable man. He's very well intentioned. He's very well qualified, and he has over 30 years experience with the RCMP before coming to the city of Lethbridge. So this is someone looking at Lethbridge Police Services with fresh eyes. I don't think we could have a better person doing the job. I think some of the processes that we're dealing with, and I was frustrated when I was a member of the police commission, that there were many cases that took so long to resolve. And I think the public's frustrated with that as well, that an incident occurs and it takes a year and a half or so to actually come to a resolution. And what we have is a process, it's a provincial process, which has a bottleneck. And these cases are not being handled effectively and efficiently, in my opinion. But I understand due process, and it's a quasi-legal process. And often anyone who has been accused of not doing the job the way they were supposed to, perhaps even breaking the law themselves, is entitled to legal representation. And we all know that legal cases take a long time, and the cases have to be prepared appropriately. So that does create frustrations. In terms of the culture, our Minister of Justice suggested that there was a cultural issue at the Lethbridge Police Services, and I believe that the Chief of Police is addressing that. He's making sure that people have the appropriate training and that those training programs are in place to ensure that people are aware of what they should and should not do. So I believe the police chief, Chief Medizadeh, is doing a great job in terms of responding. And if there's some additional information that the Minister of Justice requires, I'm sure the police chief and the police commission will supply it.
Now, we keep hearing instances of more and more drug houses popping up in our city, then shut down by SCAN and the Alberta Sheriffs. But then a week later, another one pops up maybe a few houses down the road. What's being done to end this vicious cycle?
Well, it does depend a lot on neighborhoods and neighborhood cooperating with the scan unit. We've always advocated for more resources in the city of Lethbridge, including having a permanent scan unit in Lethbridge. The scan unit generally comes down from Calgary and comes down on an occasional basis when they have enough evidence, and it can take 6 months to 12 months to gather enough information to shut down a drug house. So to have them shut down and have another one pop up 2 blocks away within a week is frustrating. But the only way to solve that is to have ongoing resources right here in the city of Lethbridge, where drug houses are addressed on a constant basis, and there's a regular presence of scan in the city itself.
Now let's talk about something a little more positive here. Have you had a chance to take in the farmers market at Lethbridge Exhibition Park? Is it busy? Are people happy that it's finally back?
I think people were a little bit nervous at the beginning, and they went out of their way to post regulations and what people had to do. They made it very clear with the signing, and I think that the farmers market is another fun event that people can attend in order to make use of local vendors and support the local economy. So yeah, I'm thrilled to support the farmers market, and it always was a social thing for me, and I always have to be a little bit careful. I have to set an example as well that I just can't go up and converse people up, with people 2 feet away from their face anymore, or hug people that I see. So it's a little bit of a different experience, and I'm hoping that one day we can get back to the way things were.
Now let's talk a bit about the AgriFood Hub and Trade Center, which you touched on earlier here at Exhibition Park. How's it coming along so far with the construction? And is it on budget?
It's early days, and I know that there are struggles with supplies. Uh, Maintaining construction schedules is going to be challenging as we recover. We're seeing significant inflation in terms of some supplies, steel and lumber. And we hope that these things can be managed. And sometimes, in order to manage costs, what you have to do is accept delivery delays. So this potentially could take longer than we anticipate, but I know they're doing their best to manage and contain the costs as well as keep it on budget. But this is a situation that's being managed all over North America right now.
Well, you know what? I agree. I mean, I'm rebuilding my mother's deck right now. The cost of lumber is 4 times the price that it was last year. Even a sheet of plywood is over $200 now. It's just 4x8 sheet of plywood. It's incredible. Lethbridge Transit, let's talk a bit about that here for a moment, launched its new CityLink network. Explain what that will really mean for transit riders here in our city.
Well, what we want to do is find creative ways of identifying efficiencies in transit. So the big challenge we have is we're basically subsidizing transit by about 90 cents on the dollar. So how do we be fair to people who rely on transit as their only means of transportation? So many people who drive cars every day say, "Whoa, you know, we we're just subsidizing transit. It's just not worth it." But if transit is your only means of transportation, we have to make sure that those citizens have a quality of life. And it's not as convenient. They can't jump in a car and go to Costco or go to Walmart. They have to follow the bus schedule. It takes them 2 or 3 times as long as anybody in a car. But that's their way of life. There are people who are visually impaired, for example, who rely on the buses. It's important to make sure that we include and accommodate everybody in the city, and it has to be affordable as well. So it's who we are as a city. So the new programs are, what can we do to find efficiencies? How can we have main routes which are more common in terms of access, and how can we use less frequent routes to allow people to access the bus from outlying areas or extended areas within residential subdivisions? So we're trying to draw a balance there, trying to do some new things. We've got new people in transit looking at new plans, and we're hoping to create efficiencies up to $350,000 and provide some benefits to taxpayers while not undermining the service to those who need it.
Now that the weather is finally warming up, we may begin seeing more of our homeless and the homeless issue here in our city. What's the city doing to address the homeless issue here in Lethbridge? And explain perhaps how you're working with nonprofits such as Streets Alive and the food banks to help those most vulnerable.
Well, we tried to reallocate the funding that we were providing to a whole variety of organizations in the past. So last fall, we reallocated $6 million and we tried to target areas that would possibly have the most success in addressing the social issues in the city. While that's occurring, we've also formed a community well-being and safety strategy, and we're getting input and getting assistance with where should certain services go. How should we address that going forward in the future? The accusation has been the city has no plan. Uh, and, I'm sympathetic to hearing that. Uh, Whenever we've tried to move forward or an organization has tried to move forward, it's met with resistance from neighborhoods. So how do we provide the services? Where do they go? And rather than having the politicians trying to come up with solutions, we're now involving community groups in what those solutions might look like. And I think as the process has begun, many people who thought the solutions were simple are now understanding that they're a lot more complex than they thought they were. So I look forward to people who are directly involved and have a passion for this, helping us come forward with the solutions that we need to implement going forward to address this serious issue in our city.
Yeah, no easy answers, absolutely. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman, thanks so much for your time today.
Well, it's always been a pleasure. Hal, we're running out of times to meet. Got maybe three more. So I've always enjoyed it and look forward to talking with you again through the summer and up until the municipal election.